All right, well, walk right up to those grapes and tell me about your Merlot.
Well, this is our Merlot behind you as well as behind me. It was our first planting, and we get approximately 18 or so tons of fruit every year from the Merlot.
How old are the vines we're looking at now?
These vines are approximately 11 years old. And I say approximately because we have a little kill from the gophers every year, and we have to replant them, but 95% of the vines here are 11 years old.
How many cases of the estate Merlot will you produce?
How many will we?
We'll produce probably about 700 to 800 cases a year of estate Merlot. Well, the Merlot goes everywhere. The Merlot kind of goes into the cab and into our Bordeaux style blend. Just getting into the color change now, or veraison is what they call it. Another week it'll all be uniformly colored and the final home stretch to ripening. This stuff will be ready in probably 6 weeks, I guess.
How'd you go to pick this particular variety for this spot?
We talked with the county agricultural agent, and she took samples of the soils and took into account the topography of the layout.
What kind of soil are we talking about here?
I don't know the name of the soil, except that it contains an abundance, as you can see, of small shale-like rock. And
what's the depth of the topsoil?
I would say probably 18 to 20 inches. And when you reach the subsoil level, it's not remarkably different. That is, you need to be a trained soils agent to be able to recognize the difference between the topsoil and the first subsoil. The soil itself, for growing purposes, is well, they dug ditches about 6 or more feet deep, and I would say the first 5 feet are perfectly acceptable for growing. And it's turned
Get
out
all the good stuff. Leave the second crop there.
So what are we looking at grape variety here?
This is Zinfandel. This is the estate Zin.
Zinfandel produces a lot of secondary clusters.
So if you think you have a lot of time and you want to spend the extra money to have a crew come back in, these will ripen, but this will be the middle of November, and there's just not that much crop out here. You come here, we have another 8 acres of this planted, and you come out and get another 2 tons of fruit maybe. But you got to spend 3 days out here with a full crew picking it.
So do you?
No, we just drop it.
Here's another one that's just...
But they're pretty tart right now. This is probably the most acidic of all the fruit out here. So these, the reason the alcohols are so high on the estate Zin is that in order to get an acid balance, pH of above 3.4 or even 3.35, so you can ferment and you can get the thing dry, we got to let it hang out here till the sugars are pretty high. And that's sometimes 27, 28 sugar.
Approximately how many acres do you have planted to Zinfandel?
We got about 8 of this one too.
I think it's closer to 9. We got the most Zinfandel planted of the varietal, so it's probably 9 or something like that.
Everyone's complaining about low crop.
And what age are these vines?
These are about the same. These were one of the first ones we planted, so this will be their 13th leaf, I guess you'd call it.
Could be. Well, we didn't get them in the ground the first year we were here. We got them in the ground the next year.
And how far away are you from harvest at this point?
These grapes are probably closer than the Merlot, but or 6 weeks, 6, 8
Yeah,
weeks.
6 weeks.
Our vineyard's always one of the last ones to come off for whatever reason.
You getting around to it?
Maybe. No, it just seems like it just ripens a little bit slower. It's a little cooler over here because we're closer to the ocean, and just one of those things. It's hard to. The vines are struggling quite a bit, so you don't really. They look green and lush right now, but they're really kind of they're working right now.
Yeah, I still do.
We got to up there.
Okay, so which grape varieties are we looking at here?
This is Cab. This is going to be the King Kong Cab here too. There's not shit for crop out here. Had a real bad, right during flowering, we got real dramatic temperatures. Got super hot, just crazy hot, 110, 115. And then it got really cold, like almost freezing. So the berries have what they call a shatter to them. These look pretty good. I'm going to trim off the ones that were shattered. But it's like every other berry just doesn't develop because the flower was damaged from the extreme temperatures. So like we probably lost half our crop before we even really got started this year. But this stuff here, this is less than a ton an acre. I mean, it'll be really wonderful wine, but you can't really survive in business too long farming it.
How many acres do you have planted for Cabernet?
This will be about 7, and we'll get 5 tons off it. We'll get less than a ton an acre.
How many total cases of that will be produced then?
I don't know. It'll be we'll have to supplement it with other cab. We'll always have an estate cab of a couple hundred cases, starting with the 06 vintage, and then we'll always have the Nebula cab that has other people's Cabernets in it. See up there, that's the part of the vineyard. Vines just won't grow up there. Weeds don't grow up there. We work on it. We put triple emitters up there, trying to get some water on it. Dumping water on those vines. You need to see where the vines just stop growing.
So why?
It's all rock. It's solid rock up there. And that's where you find your limestone, is up there too, in the higher parts of the vineyard. But these will break your heart trying to get up and down these hills without an ATV. I'm a fat boy, but even thin boys have a hard time getting up there. But this stuff, this is kind of like these little shot berries, like right here, these little greenies. That's what you're talking about. That's what happens with the extreme. All this stuff inside here, that should normally be grapes. That's just fried. Got fried with the heat. So that's actually sort of sweet. The cab will probably come off. My guess would be another 3 weeks of good heat. Then the Chardonnay will be the first off. Well, I haven't even gotten up there to look at the Chard yet. But Dunning's place, which is over this ridge here, he's coming off maybe at the end of next week. Ours is usually about a week later than that, so we'll be full on in a couple weeks. That's when you really got to work, to be honest with you. Because we didn't have that other property when we started. It was all done here. Well, they had that big surf fire just covered over here. So the sun was all like pink and filtered, and it's kind of creepy. Actually, I think I took a picture of it last time.
We're visiting today with Bob Hartenberger, owner, father of Rich Hartenberger, winemaker at Midnight Cellars in Paso Robles, California. Bob, tell us the origin of the name, the year you moved here, and maybe a little bit about Paso Robles as a geographical region?
Well, the origin of the name arose as a result of deciding not to use some of the more conventional categories of winery names. For example, I didn't want to name it after any mythological deities. I didn't want to name it after after our family name, because it's very lengthy and not very easily remembered. I didn't want to name it after any topographical features like Big Mountain or Dirty Creek. After I got rid of all these categories of names that I didn't like, I just sat down one night and started writing different words, and came up with what we have. I used to, in a former life, be a patent and trademark attorney, so I've sat in on a lot of meetings where trademarks are selected, and so using that background as well as what I liked and didn't like, we've got Midnight Cellars.
What year was the winery founded?
1995.
And how did you happen to choose Paso Robles as a destination?
Well, we looked pretty carefully at Napa and Sonoma counties, and frankly, the real estate prices were more reasonable in SLO County, and that was a principal consideration. Another consideration was our conversation with a consultant, John Frederickson, in San Francisco, and after telling him what we were trying to do and what we'd like to be able to do, he said, if I were you, I would buy a big house with a lot of room, with an old barn, and just start the business without buying someone else's baggage and drawbacks and the like. So that's what we did.
So you decided hiring an official winemaker with formalized training was too expensive, so your son was paint by number?
I
had to have something to do.
He just jumped right in and started learning how to do things, and we had consultants, very capable winemaker consultants. There, at that time, back in the mid-90s, there were a lot of people who would tell you a lot of important and valuable information about winemaking for $60 an hour, and we took advantage of that. We used our first consultant was Nick Martin, formerly of Martin Brothers Winery, and we proceeded in that manner.
Rich, tell us a little bit about Paso Robles as a growing region for vines and grapes, like the rainfall, the type of soil, and even the climate change temperature swings that you'll have from late afternoon or heat of the day into the evening.
Well, Paso Robles is an enormous growing region. You could fit 3 Napa Valleys in one Paso Robles appellation. So it goes all the way from 8 miles from the ocean out by Carmi McKnight to 50 miles from the ocean out near Shandon. So there's going to be a huge difference in rainfall. We get a lot more rain over here. Heat, they get a lot more heat over there. So really there's so many different areas in Paso that you can't really characterize it as one type of growing region. If you find the proper place in the appellation, you can grow anything if you do it right.
For the vineyards you have here, what's the average rainfall?
Here we're probably running about 16 inches of rain a year. Wouldn't you think?
About 16 to 18. We have had some years where we have gotten as much as 24 inches of rain, and we've had some where we got about only 12. So 16, 17, something like that is a likely average.
Which grape varieties do you produce that are estate grown, your own vineyards, and which grape varieties or flavors are sourced, or a combination of?
Well, we grow on our place, we grow the Chardonnay, which we make estate. We grow the Zin, which we also make in estate. We grow the Merlot, which we also make in estate, I know. And we do the Cab and a little bit of Petit Verdot for the Bordeaux style blend, the Mare.
So how many total flavors do you produce normally?
On any given day, you can walk in our tasting room and try up to 17 different varietals and wines, which is a lot.
What is the case production of Midnight Cellars currently, total case?
We do about 8,000 cases across all of them. The Full Moon is about 25% of that. And other than that, you'll have your main, the Cab, Merlot, and Zins. We do larger quantities, 800 cases or so. And then we do, the rest of them are, for wine club and tasting room.
Are you known for any one particular varietal, or which one do you produce the most of?
Well, a particular varietal, if we were known for anything, would probably be our Zin, and maybe our Cab if you ask the right people.
And how many total cases do you produce of those two flavors?
The Zinfandel, we do 2 Zins. We do the estate Zin, and then we do a Crescent, which is some estate mixed with some other real fun vineyards in the area. That one we'll do 800 cases of. The estate is whatever we get that year off the estate. It could be 250 cases, it could be 650 cases. All depends on the crop. Cabernet, again, is about 800 cases a year.
What's your choice of oak barrels that you utilize, and what kind for which grape variety?
I prefer French oak on Syrah and Chardonnay. So I'll do 100% French oak on both of those varietals for us. The Zinfandel really doesn't get much oak at all. More neutral barrels, older used barrels. The Cabernet Merlot, Mare are going to get a majority of American oak, with probably maybe 15-20% French oak splashed in there.
What would you say in the year's time that you all have been producing wines, certainly watching this whole area evolve from the earlier days, is the single most important change you made in the vineyard that has resulted in better quality made wines by you?
To be honest with you, we haven't changed much on our viticultural practices out in the vineyard. A lot of people are now cutting crops and limiting their crop size. Our place, you just don't really need to do that. We don't set much crop.
We don't have a whole lot of water, so
Right, so it makes it difficult. For us, we do, every year we shoot thin now the Zin, which will open up the fruit zone, making things a little bit easier to ripen, get some airflow and some sunlight. And we will pull leaves. That's really all we're doing out there. We're not extensively dropping fruit ever. Just don't have it.
So when you guys first got into wine, whatever years those might have been, can you think of a wine that you tasted at that moment in your life that you thought was near perfection? In other words, Bob, can you remember the best wine you've ever tasted?
I was going to interrupt the conversation a few minutes ago and say, are you coming back to the winery, to the tasting room?
Yes.
And I'd like for you to taste our Chardonnay. Is it the 2005 or 06?
06.
06 Chardonnay. It's aged. It's fermented and aged in new French oak barrels from the center of France, which other people, when I tell them that we use 100% of those barrels, said, that's very expensive. And we'll let you taste and see what you think.
You think that might be the best you've ever tasted?
For me, yeah.
How about for you?
Of our wines or other wines?
Just wine, period.
And from that I've tasted recently or back in the day?
No, just one that's the most memorable kind of so far.
It was probably the one that I had with you. It was the either that Yquem or
Chateau Yquem.
the Margaux that we had. It was an 86 or 85 Margaux. And that was a pretty good, fun wine.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
American wines, I always liked the Maryvale profile. That was always a real elegant, well-balanced wine.
Yeah, if we're talking about other people's wines, Maryvale profile is one of my favorites.
That's just always good.
Well, you've already answered my next question, Bob, but for Rich, what do you think up to now is the best wine you've ever made?
01 Mare, maybe?
Mare Nectaris?
Yeah.
What's that made from?
That is our Cab Merlot, Cab Franc, Malbec, Petit Verdot, our Bordeaux style blend.
You still have any around the winery?
Yeah, you might be able to run across the bottom.
For a Margaux?
Yes, that's right. That's right. The Mares have always been I've always held those in my heart. I like all the markets. They've always done good. Never scored less than 88 points. I think that a few good scores on it. And that's the one that we're really making from all these different departments. And people like it. It's a little more rewarding than just all your cabs together on the cab.
Bob, of the people you've known in your life or known of, whether you ever met them, someone you admired, who would you most like to share a bottle of Midnight Cellars wine with? The family's a given. We all get the guys playing up to my mom and dad. And we're thinking president, movie star, someone influential in your business life or even in the winery aspects of life.
No one's ever asked that, and I don't have any ready answers.
All right, how about you?
I would like to party with Will Ferrell. I think he'd be a lot of fun to tip a few back with.
Will Ferrell. Very good, a comedian. So
Indeed.
excellent. Well, gentlemen, we have always enjoyed the Midnight Cellars wines. We've been fans of them for years and know that the quality will continue. We're excited to see what's up and coming, and we certainly appreciate the time you've taken with us today. We encourage everyone to seek these wines out. They are readily available and they are worth finding. Great values and extraordinary quality, and we appreciate your all's time. Bob?
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. Ricardo?
As always, man.